Hello, everybody. My name is Daniela. I'm the co-founder and CTO here at Momento. Really excited to talk to Chris today about our Redis compatibility clients. Chris, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, my name is Chris Price, and I'm the lead of the dev ecosystem team at Momento. So my team works on all of the libraries and client software that users install on their own machines to interact with Momento in their favorite programming languages. So my charter is to make everything as simple as humanly possible for users to write code that talks to Momento.
Awesome. Great to hear that. So today we're here to talk about Redis compatibility clients. Tell me a bit more about them. What are they? Why did you build them?
Sure. So we're really excited about some of the APIs that we've come up with for our Momento client libraries. We also recognize that there are a lot of users out there who already have a bunch of code written up where they're using Redis as their caching layer. And sometimes it can be an insurmountable hurdle to have to think about going through and changing all of your existing code to use a different API than the one that you started off with. So we wanted to, in addition to our first class SDKs, we also wanted to make sure that we had paths available for people who had existing code that uses Redis APIs to make it as easy as possible to migrate over to Momento or to try Momento out and see if it feels like it for them. So that's where our Redis compatibility clients come in. These are libraries that we have released that take the existing API of some popular Redis client, like a Python one or a Node.js one, and provide a way to connect to Momento using that exact same.
So what does that really mean for me as an application developer? I don't want to go and make a whole bunch of code changes. Do I still have to do that if I use one of these compatibility clients?
No, our goal is to make the code changes that you have to make, an absolute minimum. So basically all you really need to do is update the dependencies in your package management system, and then maybe change your import statements, and mostly the rest of your code should just work. And I actually have a little demo project that I set up for this call that I can use to show an example of that.
Great. Yeah.
Cool.
Let's take a look.
Cool. So this is a toy little application that I wrote that uses the official Redis library for Node.js. So this is some TypeScript code. I'll go do it real quick. Basically, just to kind of simulate interacting with a database and caching things that you might store in a database, I created a little interface here for representing a user. Nothing interesting. We just have a user ID, first name and last name, and a location. You can imagine this mapping to any object that you store in a database that you're caching in Redis. So then here we just have a couple of convenience functions that will convert an instance of that to a generic sort of TypeScript record object, which is basically just a generic hash map in TypeScript. And then this one goes the opposite direction and knows how to take that generic map and convert it back to one way to objects. Nothing interesting about those functions. So then here's what our main function might look like. This is actually using like I said, the official Node.js Redis client. So here we call a function to instantiate the Redis client, and then it has a connect function that we call to connect to the database. Then what I'm going to do is create two users here, one for myself and one for Daniela. And then we'll loop over those users and we'll call the Redis hset command to store those users into Redis. And then we'll loop over the user IDs and we will read those using the hget to read them back out of the database. And then we'll call our little utility function that'll convert from the Redis hash format into like our official user interface up here. So, and then at the end, the last thing we do is disconnect. And you'll see I have this create Redis client function here, which is just calling the normal Redis.create client. That's it. So to give a quick little demo of this, in this shell window over here, I'm going to go ahead and start up a local Redis instance, just with a normal Docker command. So this is just running like an official Redis image. Now we've got a Redis server listing locally. Down here, I'm going to start another Redis command. This is going to be the Redis CLI. There's some command that you can use in Redis CLI called monitor, which just attaches us to the Redis server and allows us to see the traffic going through so that we know that commands will get sent to the Redis server. Now up here in the shell, I'm just going to use npm to run this example code that I just showed you. And what we'll see here on the top is we see a log message saving our 2 users, and then we see that we are loading our users back out, and we can see that we got back the data that we expected. And if you look at the corresponding information on the Redis CLI monitor, you can see the 2 hset commands and then the 2 hget bulk. So nothing fancy there, just a pretty simple Redis interaction. So now I'm going to show you what it takes to change this code over to use Momento as the backend using our Momento Redis compatibility client. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install a new dependency. So this will just be npm install and then the name of the Node Redis client that we have that we've published to npm.js. So I'll run that install command. And now if I were to open up my package.json file, we'd see that the new dependency is there. The next thing we need to do, if you don't have one already, is get a Momento auth token. All right. So now I'm going to get a Momento auth token from the Momento console. So to do that, you just go to console.go momento.com, and you'll see the screen where you can just log in with Google or GitHub. You can use this screen to create a cache. You'll need to create one if you haven't created one already. You can just do that with this create cache button. And then you'll need to generate a auth token. So I will click in here. Probably for the purposes of this demo, I would just create super user token. Maybe only allow it to expire for after 7 days just for security. So then I'd click this generate token. And I will get a token on the screen here and I will copy it into my clipboard buffer. And then I will go over here and I would set it into an environment variable that I can use in my program. I've actually already done that off camera. So I have an environment variable in here called Momento auth token that we'll use for the rest of this demo. Okay, so now we'll get on to the actual code changes that I need to make. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment out this import statement that imports the official Redis client. And I'm going to replace it with an import statement from the new Momento library that we imported or that we added via npm. So that should show up in my autocomplete now. And I can go in here to see what things are available to import there. I'm going to import 2 things. I'm going to import a function called create client, and I'm going to import this namespace called Momento. And now I'm going to go down here and I'm going to change this one function where we instantiated our Redis client. I'm going to comment that line out, and I'm going to copy and paste a line from our documentation. We can share the link for this towards the end of the video, but our documentation for this Node Redis compatibility client has this exact code that you need in it. So copying that. All right, go paste that in. Okay, so we're calling the create client function from the Momento library that imported up here. And we basically just need to construct a Momento client inside of it. That's going to wrap. Most of this stuff is pretty boilerplate, but you will see here that we told it we wanted to configure its authentication from that environment variable that I was just talking about a minute ago. And then you put your cache name in here. I forgot our return statement. So that's it. Now we've just changed the one line that instantiates the client. And now you can see the editor, it was red for a second when it was unhappy about my return type here. It was complaining about these different functions that I'm calling from the Redis API that it didn't think were implemented by whatever object I returned here. But you can see when I fix that, the return statement back in. Now it recognizes that this object that I'm returning actually implements all of those APIs. And so it's happy with the compilation. So that's it. Those are the only changes that I need to make to my code. The rest of the code where I was calling the Redis functions like hset, hget all, disconnect, connect, the normal things you would call on your Redis client. I didn't need to change those lines of code at all. So now going to run the example again. And what you will see is we got the same output as we had from the previous run. We have a couple of log statements where we're saving the users, and then we have some new log statements where we're loading the users. But you'll notice that there were no traffic to the local Redis server at all. There was no new messages that appeared on the Redis. And that's because the traffic is now going to Momento rather than to Redis. So now that I ran that example against Momento instead of Redis, I've come over here to the Momento console, and I'm in the cache that we used for the demo. And if I type in user 1, we hopefully will see there's Chris. And if I type in user 2, there's Daniela. So you can see with those just a couple of lines of code changes that the same Redis code that we had already had in our application still ran, but now it's just sending the data over to Momento rather than to the local Redis.
That's really cool. So let me summarize my understanding. For an existing application that already uses Redis, all they have to do, if you scroll back on your code editor, is change the import statement, assuming that they've installed the Redis compatible Momento client, change the import statement to use that client, change where that client is initiated to instead initiate the Momento version of the client. And hopefully all the red lines will just disappear at that time.
That's right. That's the plan. If we've done our job correctly, that's how it should work.
That's pretty simple. But Chris, the Redis supports a lot of different commands, right? So what happens to the Momento compatibility client? How would the user find out about that mapping? Would it work 100% of the time?
No, not 100% yet. Some of these clients, some of our Redis compatibility clients are pretty new. Let me show you on one thing that's interesting about that on our GitHub account. Let's see. So the Momento, the Node.js Redis client available here. You can see all the source code for it and everything. So for the time being, like our first goal was to get some Redis compatibility clients out there in all of the popular programming languages and implementing the most popular Redis APIs. So the basic get, set, delete, and then hget, hset, those ones. And we want to get those out there so that people can start trying them out. We haven't implemented every single function that Redis supports, and we haven't even implemented every single function that Momento is capable of supporting. At this point, we're really looking for feedback from users on which of the APIs you use the most and which ones that you need in order to make your app work. And then we're kind of rapidly working on adding those as users request them in the different programming languages. And a lot of these clients that we've been working on so far, we also provide our own custom interface. So here you can see we have this special interface called Momento Redis client. This is actually a subset of the official interface of the normal Redis client, the one that comes from the Node Redis library. And so what that means is that if when you are declaring your client variable, you just add in this one little snippet of code here that tells it that you want the TypeScript compiler to interpret this as an instance of Momento Redis client, then this interface will only allow the compiler to find the methods that we've actually already did. So what that means is that if there's some methods that you were calling on the official Redis client that we don't support yet in the Momento client, then just putting this one little type edge here will allow the compiler to go through your entire application and see if there are any APIs that you're calling that we don't support yet. And if that turns out to be the case, then you'll get a compile type error. So you'll know right then and there without actually having to go run your code or anything if there's certain APIs that you need that we haven't to get. And if that happens, then you can reach out to us and we'd be really excited to partner with you and figure out which APIs are missing and get them added. So we've done something akin to this in pretty much every programming language that supports this kind of compile time type checking to try to help users discover these kinds of things right up front rather than having any surprises happening. at runtime. And this isn't required. You don't have to use this type hint if you don't want to. You can just, like I showed before, just drop it in with the same um, type inference that the normal Redis client constructor would provide. But this is just a nice little value add that we're trying to get out there for people who really want to like try to make sure ahead of time that we support all the things that they need.
That's good to know. So before we end here, Chris, one last question for you. In terms of the language supported, you mentioned a few times that you're using the official Node Redis client. What about the other languages? What do we have available right now?
Yeah. So as of today, we have our initial implementations of this Node, the official Node Redis client, another client for Node.js that is called IO Redis that we've found that people find really popular. We have one for the .NET C# Stack Exchange.Redis API, and we have one for the official Golang Redis client. We also have one that will be shipping in the next day or two. Hopefully, by the time you see this video, it'll be out there for the official Python Redis client. And we plan to keep on expanding this. There's a couple in Java that we want to do. There's a handful of other ones out there that are on our radar. But this is the kind of thing where if you as a user reach out to us and say, hey, I want to try Momento, and I see that you guys have an SDK in whatever your favorite language is, but you don't have this Redis client there yet, then that'll help us prioritize and go ahead and move that up to the top of the list and knock it out sooner than later. So we're really interested in getting feedback from users on which ones are going to make the most difference for your existing code where you're using Redis.
Yeah, for sure. I think any removal of the friction to try out new products like new services like Momento would be greatly appreciated, and we're always super excited for user feedback. So that's all we got today. Thanks everybody for giving us your time. Hope you have fun coding. Bye.
Thank you.